Hello everybody and welcome to the Disruptive Innovation Festival, the online festival of ideas curated by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that asks the question, what if we could redesign everything? My name is Leo and in this session, Acadepreneur, taking academic research to a commercial world. Acadepreneur, of course, being a compound noun, joining the two contrasting worlds of academia and entrepreneurship. And in this session, Praful Sharma, an innovator who specializes in sensing and Internet of Things technologies, is a doctoral fellow from Cranfield University. And he'll be joining from Cranfield today to share his own experiences from both academia and entrepreneurship. He'll be highlighting the differences between the two and exploring the significant impact that can happen when the two mindsets work together. Angeliki, a master's student in thermal power at Cranfield University, is over in Cranfield with Praful today, and she'll be facilitating the discussion. And before I hand things over to Angeliki and Praful, a reminder to you all watching live that you are encouraged to post your thoughts, comments, and questions in the next 30 minutes or so on the session page in the chat function just below where this Hangout is streaming from. And Angeliki will be on hand to ask your questions to Praful throughout the session. So do keep them coming throughout, and Praful will try his best to answer any questions that you have. So without any further ado, Praful and Angeliki in Cranfield, it's over to you.
Yeah. Hi, I have with me today Dr. Praful Sharma, who will give us a few tips and experience of taking academic research to commercial world. Hello, Praful.
Hello.
You have been successful in taking several of your inventions to market. We'd like to hear about it and experiences. But first, what is an acadepreneur?
Well, hello to the audience, and Angeliki, thanks for coming in. Acadepreneur is a term which I coined about merging of the two worlds of academia and entrepreneurship. If these two qualities are inherent in a person, then we can call them acadepreneur. So these are the two qualities if inherent in a person. Because academic mindset works very differently than entrepreneurial mindsets. They are two different worlds, but they can work together hand in hand, or if many people join together with different mindsets, then it's a magical team. Magic can happen. I'll give you an example where normally academic world, when say you write thesis or PhD thesis, or even when professors, they write papers, review thesis, it goes in a format of you do literature review, you may recall that, literature review followed by definition of the problem, introduction session, and then what is the problem you have, what is the solution you give, you do some experiments, experimental setup, results and conclusions. So this is the typical flow of thoughts which happens in academic world. When it's entrepreneurship, it's a bit different. In a sense, it follows the same logic, but the terminologies are a bit different. So in entrepreneurship, it's a business plan rather than a paper or a thesis. So business plan, they think in terms of what is the customer problem and what is the so that's a kind of equivalent of literature review, right? What is out there? What are the solutions out there? What is the problem? And then again, as part of literature review, equivalent terms, what is the market size? What are the existing solutions in the market? And then equivalent from academic world is problem statement. So here also there's a problem statement as to what are the pain points where customers are facing, or any person is facing in entrepreneurial world. And then again, solution, equivalent solution here is what is the product which can be offered, or technologies which can be offered. So and equivalently, when we say solutions, there's a here financial model. So that's very different from the academic world, which is a blind spot for the academics. The financial accounting, financial projections, that is something which academic can learn. But once they learn it, they can pretty much learn the entrepreneurial world. So what I'm highlighting here is how the two different mindsets are, but they are following very similar thought process. One is more academic, but one is more entrepreneurial, except the financial accounting. Of course, when academics do project management, they also do financial projections. But here it's with a lot of assumptions. When it's entrepreneurial, it's kind of hand in the air many times, future projections, financial modeling. So, these are the two different mindsets, but when a person learns the two different mindset, can juggle between the two, I call it acadepreneur.
So you teach innovation. How do you innovate? And please share your tips.
Right. So innovation is an interesting term. Everybody would like to do innovation, but not everybody knows how to do innovation. Well, at times, most of the times, it is serendipity. By accident, many times innovations happen. But I usually teach innovations and teach that there's an algorithm of innovation. How do you innovate? So there are various ways, there's no unique path of innovation as I've experienced. My own experience, the way I do it is I look at nature. When we look at nature, nature has evolved over time. It's called biomimetics. Biomimetics is something which is, you take inspiration from the nature and then apply to your problems. The way this can be done is, so this is a pretty much an algorithm I follow, that if you get a problem which needs solving, then you generalize it as to how nature has solved that problem. And then you borrow some ideas from the nature and apply to your own problems. For example, you have done thermal power, right? You're expert on that. In the gas turbines, there's a lot of these blades, and blades have a thermal barrier coating, right? Now, thermal barrier coating can be thought of as, something which is protecting the metal of the blade from the high temperatures. Yeah. So there's a coating which does the thermal barrier to the metals. Similarly, similar thought process. If somebody wants to do innovation on that, the thought process is, say, in the nature, how nature has solved this. For example, where is in nature where you would like to protect something from the high temperatures, or where in the nature is you would like to protect something from, say, extreme temperatures, low temperatures or high temperatures. So we can take examples of say the fat layer. The fat layer in us or any animal is designed to protect our muscles, human body or any living organism body, from the environment. It's a insulating layer. Similarly, there are examples of, say, take the example of, say, as simple as sheep, and there's a layer on the outside. It's a thermal barrier layer. Now this is a similar mindset. I'm not saying that this is the solution, but this is how you can look at the nature in a very simplistic manner as to what is your problem, and try to see equivalent problems in the nature and take inspiration from that. So that is one method I follow. The second way is look at technology trends, where the technology is going in the future, and basically predict the future and act on it now. That's the way I follow. For example, there's an example of Kodak. Now Kodak failed to see the future, and they could not. They were, if I give an example of Kodak, it's a well-known example that they were market leaders once upon a time in cameras, film-based cameras, and at that time they saw the potential of digital cameras, but they took a conscious decision of not to develop digital cameras. That's the future, but inevitably other companies developed the cameras, digital cameras, and at the end of the day, finally the film cameras got wiped out by the digital cameras, and Kodak, which was the market leader at once upon a time, got bankrupt. They filed for bankruptcy in 2000s. So that's an example of if a company or if an innovator does not see the future and act on it, then you can be lagging behind. And that's one way of innovating, as to you can predict the future or see the trends where the technology trends are going, and start doing that now. See probably 10 years or 20 years into the future, and start doing it now, or maybe 5 years into the future and start doing it now. So that's another way of innovation. But the core problem of innovation is the problem. So you need to identify what you would like to solve. Some people say that half of the problem is solved when you understand the problem in quite a more detail. So it's worth spending a lot of time in what is the problem. And I follow the methodology of 5 whys. 5 whys in the sense of why it is a problem, why it is a problem, why it is a problem. So basically 5 levels deeper on why it is a problem. So it gives us the core of the problem, and then go and solve using nature or technology trends, and there are several other methods. Take a walk in the park. That's the most effective way of innovation. So I'm sure there are several ways of innovations, but these are the things which I follow. Thank you.
Intellectual property. How to protect patents and intellectual property and commercialize it?
Well, intellectual property is quite important discussion. I think in academic world, we tend to do a lot of publications and patents. At once upon a time, it was not looked upon as something great, but now academic world is more and more getting conscious about filing patents proactively. Now, intellectual property, as to just define it properly, even publications, say papers, research, they are intellectual property. Whatever we worked on, knowledge base, it's intellectual property. Something which we know, they are also intellectual property. If it is not published or it is secret, then it's trade secrets. It's a form of intellectual property. Patents are a form of intellectual property, but it's not the only one. The other form is copyrights. You can copyright your designs or logos. They're also intellectual properties. So intellectual property is a bigger umbrella term. Publications is one way of showing the intellectual property that we have done this work and this is the results. It's out there, people can use it. So you don't have exclusive rights to those intellectual properties. But patents and copyrights and know-how, trade secrets, all these are intellectual properties which are protected by design. So patent is one thing which is very important in if an academic is serious in commercializing the research. Normally, the patents are, when academic needs to file a patent, they need to approach the universities, their tech transfer offices. There are normally research officers or tech transfer officers, which need to work very closely with the academic, and they can decide together whether this innovation is worth patenting, because patenting is a very expensive process. It's not only the first, the first application which is there's a fees of patent agents and patent offices, but also during subsequent years, like year 1, year 4, there are maintenance costs which are huge. So patenting is a very expensive process. The university departments, they are very conscious about it, and because they need to pay the maintenance fee. So the decision of patenting by the academic and the university is a very crucial one as to how sure are we about commercializing this. There are many ways of commercialization, licensing or spin-outs or companies. It's a very crucial decision. For that, the academic need to have a business know-how, a business acumen to justify as to why a patent should be filed, because it's an expensive process. So it's up to the academic to develop that skill to convince somebody to pay that money. It's part of Acadepreneur exercise, I would say. So yes, intellectual property is very important to protect patenting, but that's not the only way of commercializing research. You can develop the whole knowledge base without even patenting. Just keep the knowledge, trade secrets of publications, and that also can be commercialized.
So, what are your experience on commercializing academic research?
Right. So, yeah, I have a very interesting experience on this. That while I was doing my PhD, I came up with an idea of finding, monitoring pipelines. That's one of the patents we filed within the Cranfield, and subsequently PCT, the global patent, was filed. I could convince with my supervisor to the university office that there's a potential market and this is the way to route to market. This is the way to develop this product. There are companies out there who will be ready to license or take the license it. So this required a non-academic exercise, and I was mentored by the entrepreneurship centers as to how to think about commercializing research. It required a whole lot of market research as to what is the potential market, and convincing the research office that either it can be a company, spin-out company by the university, or it can be a licensing opportunity where the other companies which can take the license. And I had to take the case studies of equivalent market or equivalent success stories from elsewhere, from other universities and other industries. So that was a justification. So that's one way of commercializing research, and it was an interesting experience for me, how to do it.
Okay, business plan.
Yeah.
Is it too difficult to write it for an academic?
Well, business plan is an essential part of commercializing research. Any commercialization activity, you have to write a business plan. Now, in my case, I wrote the business plan with my colleagues. But what I see, and the best practices I see, is if an academic is involved in research and they would like to commercialize it, there need to be a business acumen there. Now, there need to be training, because business plans are not something which inherently people know. They learn over time. Academics are very good in writing proposals, and business plan is a proposal. So it's not very difficult for academics to write a business plan. No, not at all. I learned it myself. But it needs training, conscious training, and universities are trying these days. For example, Cranfield is trying to educate academics on how to write a business plan. So I would say it's not difficult, but it needs training and experience. Many times academic may not have time or intention to do all that, because business plan, there are various sections of the business plan which are non-academic, which may be boring for the academics. I mean, they would like to do more research and fundamental. In that case, it's more prudent to join the hands with entrepreneurial people or partners who would like to collaborate and take it forward. So they can write the business plan. Academic can join hands with them and provide the knowledge and know-how and the technical knowledge. So the two individuals or the group of individuals joining hands together can take it forward. So, and this team I call Acadepreneurs. So either academic can have both the knowledge of business plan as well as academic technical know-how, or a group of individuals who would like to take the idea forward can form an Acadepreneur group. So, but yeah, writing the business plan is requires training, skills, experience, but it's not very difficult. Of course, it's a hard work because you have to do market research. Typically, in a business plan, you have a section of what is the customer's problems are, pain points are, who would like to pay for it, and then what is the solution, technical solution, what is the market size. So the market size is something which is non-typical of academic world, but it's very typical of the entrepreneurial world. So what is the market size? How would you like to price the products? What are the competitors? And what is the financial projection? So if you start to sell the product now, how will the company look like in 3 years or 5 years? You will take assumptions. How much is the investment required, and how much is the how the company trajectory or company growth will be. So that is pretty much requires training and potential collaborations or training for academics.
Thank you, Praful. We have reached the end of our session. Any last message you would like to give to the audience?
Well, the message I would like to give to the audience is, long back, academic was seen as a pure activity, pure profession, and entrepreneurship was seen as a very distinct activity. But now more and more, I see academics are taking entrepreneurial routes. The reason for that is you can make such a great impact into the world of taking fundamental science all the way to the commercial product, which is the real impact of your research. It takes, I take pride in what I do in academics as well as taking it to commercial world. because at the end of the day, my innovations are being used in the field, and that gives me high. But if I keep quiet, just do my academic research, publish papers, the chances of it being going nowhere are quite high. So I would like to see my innovations, my babies, going into the actual world, and that can happen in an acadepreneur mindset. If academics takes the charge of launching it themselves, at the end of the day, you have to grow your babies, right? So your impact can be many times more when you combine the two mindsets, the business acumen with academic world, and launch the products in the market, and it gives a different height to yourselves. So that's my message, that keep the two sides, and more universities and academics are taking that route to make an impact into the world. So yeah, that's my message. I think there's some questions there.
Hi, Praful. I've just jumped in. I thought I'd pluck a couple of questions from the session page, and thank you for that brief 20-minute introduction to the idea of acadepreneurship, which is probably quite a new one for a lot of people, but I think you've explained it quite well. There are a couple of questions, and somebody on this who's watching online, Lisa, mentioned on the session page. I think she missed the first couple of minutes, but she asked this following question: what is the difference between an acadepreneur and, say, an entrepreneur that has just graduated from university?
Thanks, Leo. So I would like to take that question on, and thanks, Lisa, for asking that question. And it's an important question. An entrepreneur or potential entrepreneur who just graduated from the university, I think we can call them an educated entrepreneur. The way I define acadepreneur is pretty much an academic mindset deeply into research. For example, a PhD researcher, or even postgraduate master's researcher, undergraduate researcher, deep into research, or even a lecturer, professor. They are generating the knowledge base, but they are too engrossed in generating the knowledge base. But magic can happen when they start to have entrepreneurial mindsets, joining the two worlds as to whatever knowledge base they are generating, how that can be, packaged into a commercial product, and what requires them, what is the resources required for packaging that academic knowledge base into a commercial product. Now that resource base is a business plan, is a market research, is a business acumen, which can be a training. Now this is an acadepreneur who is generating academic knowledge, scientific knowledge, but at the same time thinking about the world out there where we can launch the product. It can be a team. Acadepreneur can be a team of academic and an entrepreneur as a group, but it also requires academic to have an entrepreneurial mindset, so that they are conscious about filing the patents rather than publications. Because once you publish something, it's impossible to file patents because you already published in the world. So an academic needs to be conscious of what to do and what not to do to make it into an entrepreneurial success, and that's an acadepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
If I answered that.
Great. So in order to equip, say, an academic to be more entrepreneurial, you mentioned that perhaps there's training that's required to for the academic to develop skills in setting out business models, for example. Now, and related to that, there's another question coming from the session page. Is that training for academics something that the universities need to implement, or is it more a personal career development goal that needs to be encouraged?
I think it's first of all, we need exposure. We need to give exposure to academics, young academics, even for example, people like me who are taking an academic path and then entrepreneurial path. The first aspect is the exposure, that there are possibilities to make bigger impact. Of course, you can make a bigger impact in academic, but if you take it to commercial world, then it's a even bigger impact potentially. So the exposure to that and the possibility that you can make it happen by yourself or with collaboration that exposure itself is it's an eye opener for many, and it was an eye opener for me as well. I attended many trainings in Cranfield University, and similarly, many other universities are doing that training to their academics. They're designing their trainings that, hey, yes, you're doing academic research, but think about future as to if you would like to collaborate with companies or entrepreneurs, or you would like to be an entrepreneur. So these days in the UK, we see many universities are taking that path. Government is actually, UK government is quite proactive in promoting that thought process. The universities are taking pride in designing such courses, especially when the School of Management are involved in such activities. They tend to collaborate with technology departments, and that's where magic happens, when the management and technology talks together. For example, Cranfield University itself, there are departments of School of Management and entrepreneurship centers, and there's a whole lot of research which happens in the School of Engineering, Aerospace, Manufacturing. And when these guys sit together, then that's when magic happens, that the academics get exposure on how the other people are taking their ideas forward. And the School of Management gives them a brief about, hey, what are the possibilities, how you can take it forward. It need not be in the laboratory, it can be in the field. So first of all, exposure, to answer simply, and universities are taking conscious efforts. I think academics also need to get conscious efforts on turning that blind spot away and start to take some online courses. If it's available on the university itself, register for those courses, because it's worth an exposure. But there are more advanced level training courses which universities are these days designing, about writing the business plan, getting mentorship from senior academics, or even angel investors, or even experienced business people. Alumni network works very well in that, university alumni network, because several of them are entrepreneurs and several of them are business leaders in large corporations and small corporations. So they can mentor how to think in commercializing world. So yes, to answer simply, it's exposure, it's training, your own conscious efforts of getting trained, universities' efforts of getting you trained, and we see a lot of that happening in the UK. A lot of extent, we are seeing that in Europe as well. France, Netherlands, Germany are leaders already, and then of course in the United States and other parts of the world, we are starting to see that happen already. Some of the universities in the United States are actually leaders of how to turn academic ideas to entrepreneurship. MIT, Stanford are examples of that. So yes, get trained and let the university train you.
Great. Well answered, and I did answer that. You also answered the follow-up question that somebody left on the session page, the examples of this in action. I think you pretty much answered that completely, and I think that's quite a good way to end there. Actually, I think we've explored the topic of academpreneurship, how that differs, that mindset differs from just an academic entrepreneur, and I think you've highlighted. You've articulated the clear issue and difficulties in commercializing academic research, and it's notoriously difficult because the academic world and the commercial world are quite siloed. But as you say, if academics collaborate with other fields, if they're trained either through doing online courses or having universities such as Cranfield University, providing them with the right training, then enabling them to develop skills in, developing business plans and getting the right experiences, and then that gap between academic research and the commercial world can be bridged. And so I think that's a good way to end it. Thank you, Praful, and Angeliki for joining us here at the DIF today. And thank you for the online audience as well. You've put a couple of questions through, and you can still ask questions. I'm sure I can get Praful to answer any questions that he hasn't been able to answer, but I think he's done a pretty good job. So thank you both for joining us at the DIF today.
Thank you, Leo, and thanks everybody.
Thanks. So, well, we may be coming to the end of this session, and while we may also be approaching the end of the 2017 Disruptive Innovation Festival. This is the penultimate day. We still have a day and a half's worth of live and pre-recorded content to come your way, and a couple that I just want to highlight now. Today at 3 p.m. in just over an hour and a half, that's 3 p.m. UK time, we'll be joined in the live studio for the session, Just What is the Circular Economy, where we'll be exploring more about the origins and opportunities of the circular economy. And then tomorrow, the final session of the DIF, the DIF grand finale, which I don't think you're going to want to miss, again in the live studio at 5 p.m. UK time tomorrow. We'll be giving a light-hearted recap of the last 3 weeks of DIF 2017. And again, with only a day and a half left of the DIF, we've already had some really great pre-recorded and live content. I think we're just about approaching the 200 mark in terms of total sessions. It's been quite a lot of hard work, but there's some great content, and we know that that's quite a lot of sessions for you to get your teeth into. So you don't have to fret. If you go to thinkdiff.co and scroll through the schedule, you can see any and all sessions on catch-up that you can watch to your heart's content until the end of the year, which is so from the end of the DIF to the end of December. That's the catch-up period. You can watch any and all sessions that have taken place. And one that I would recommend, actually, Praful released a short video yesterday on the industrial Internet of Things and how it's taking the industrial world by storm. Just search for how IoT can save lives, innovations in industrial Internet of Things at thinkdiff.co, and you can watch that video whenever you want to in the next 4 weeks or so. And at thinkdiff.co, we also have collated similar sessions together around similar topics. In the playlist right at the top at thinkdiff.co, we have playlists of similar sessions on fashion. There's a circular economy playlist. There's a must-watch playlist for designers, a video series from Australia's first ever circular economy conference titled "Powering the Change to a Circular Economy," amongst others. So I'd get onto the playlist tab on thinkdiff.co and check those out, and you can watch all those sessions again until the end of the year. And right, I've done my piece now, and just want to say thank you again, Praful and Angeliki, for this session. And until the next time at the DIF, it's goodbye from us.